Okay, so difficult because essentially we've been talking about AI and generative AI since this morning. So how do I find the sweet spot? What we're going to be talking today, mainly from let's say LinkedIn perspective, is we're just going to share with you some info on the landscape that I think has been shared up to now a few times, the conversation that's happening, and a little bit how we see how we perceive, let's say, Gen AI. Let's start with the landscape. Overall, we think that AI has been in our life. We've been said this already since since few decades. We use it for Netflix when they need to tell us like what is the new series, or we use it for like to manage our funds. But we probably think that if ever we need to think and pinpoint a change in the past is like probably November 2022 when OpenAI has launched ChatGPT, because that one became a moment in which for us, the way that we read it is a milestone. We started to democratize the use of generative AI in the hands pretty much of everybody, creative and non-creative. And so it's all about how we do it, how we adapt to it, right? And if we think about it, in the past, we had, 2007, we launched the smartphone, big change for us, right? We embrace it and we adapt a lot to it. We actually now are dependent, right? And then the second point is, we're thinking, what is the right analogy of this such a milestone? Probably is the launch of the cloud computing, which is like one software solution that will help us enable us in delivering new features, functionality, and business models. That's why we like all of this to say. It's not going to be long for all of this. All the slides and they're not going to be so long. But the point is like, we do appreciate this quote because we think it encapsulates what we're trying to say. It's Charles Darwin in The Origin of Species that says it is not the strongest of the species that survives, but the most adaptable. And that's what we think is the invitation to, let's say, adapt to this new technology. Generative AI is touching all our lives. In here, it's just like, when I see all of these words, it's not easy. I'm going to not mull over it that much. But essentially what we're saying is that it's touching every aspect of our life. Majority of them is like with technology, with ChatGPT, with data. And the way that we actually came to this graph is by looking at the hashtags on our platform and when generative AI is mentioned. So we can see that it's touching, from the health, from the talking about sustainability technology. So it's very much helping us, hopefully, if we make the most of it, in a lot of areas of our life. Because we are like a professional platform first, and we also do marketing, but mainly as a professional platform, we like to look at the impact on the in the professional but also economic world. And essentially one thing that we have noticed is like there is a study from PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, that basically predicts that by 2030 the business growth can be of generative AI, if used appropriately, can be of $6.6 trillion yearly. So the most affected areas are marketing, sales and marketing. In these, it's actually better in here, bigger for me. So in this graph, you can see the high tech, banking, and pharmaceutical seems to be between the most impacted verticals. And if we take banking and we look at the growth opportunity, the prediction is that if these use cases are appropriately used and applied, there could be a growth between yearly and between $200 and $340 billion. And it's even more in pharmaceutical. So what we're just going to say, what we're going to try to say in here is that if we're very much looking at the opportunity of generative AI. But let's bring it back to where we are today, creativity. Marketing, of course, we're talking B2B. We also have a lot of like B2C members, let's say, or activities on LinkedIn. But at the moment, one thing that we have seen is that we're predicting, by looking at where we're at the moment, the way that the B2B marketing generative AI will be used will be mainly to focus on efficiencies and content creation. And in here, you have like just another graph that talks about where it's used in marketing. Mainly, we've seen that people use generative AI as a tool to help us with the tasks that, you know, are not very, let's say, creative, and then they want to focus more on strategy. Or if you use it for creative, it's more like content that you can then, as a human, build on that. We talked, I think that what's the name of the person who just talked before me? Matthew. I think that Matthew really talked about it. You know, they produced a video just using generative AI tools, and what we're trying to demonstrate in here is that when it comes to the creative world, we have like tools now slowly developing and coming for each phase of the creative process, right? So I'm not going to go through all of it, but essentially that's the reality. As you've seen, we tried as well to create something with a few tools. So this was created with Midjourney. But let's look at the creative conversation on the platform. We like to start with a little bit of irony, just to be a bit more lighter, let's say, a bit lighter. And we like this quote from Guillermo del Toro, who is like an Oscar-winning director. I'm sure that some of you will know in here. And basically that says, people ask if I'm worried about artificial intelligence. I say I'm worried about natural stupidity, right? So, because it's, you know, the human being, we'll see later, the human factor, us, creative people, you just have to use the creativity, AI, to become not even smarter, but to basically become amplifying a bit more what is it that you're doing. So it's more of an amplification. It doesn't replace the human being at all. That's what we think. In terms of like the conversation on the platform, we have seen that there's been an increase between September 2022 and October 2023, an increase of 30%. And of conversation about AI. But the interesting thing is that in around August 2022, we started to see all of these were organic, but then we started to see a peak of paid conversation from brands who are advertising the generative tools that they are launching. That's what I think is all interesting in all of this graph. So it's not written in there, but that's what we are retaining as well. So we know the conversation are rising. But the most important one is that people or like brands are really embracing it, and they want, of course, people to know it. So when it comes to the creative conversation, right, on LinkedIn, what do they focus mainly? And I think that we've got a few buckets in here that we have identified when listening to this conversation. One, it's all about staying up to date, and that's why we've got an example for Marketing Mind, which is an editorial company. We also have an example from, in my presentation, I removed the fourth because I think there was too much. Essentially, in here, we've got Wavemaker, media agency, that they basically experimenting using AI to challenge their visual and experimented visual brand identity. The most interesting one is ePlane. Sorry, I'm just trying. This generally is plain. I don't want to touch because were they playing before, Eddie? Oh, they didn't play for some reason. Okay, peace. Oh, was it? Okay. So anyway, what Origin did, which is a digital marketing agency, they basically asked ChatGPT to actually, AI to basically how would famous brands look if ever they were people? And in reality, you can only see the outcome of one, which I think I actually don't remember the brand. I'm sorry, I will tell you later. But basically, the results. So we've got Apple, we've got Coca-Cola. I think this one could be Pepsi, because I remember the purple. So basically, the result is highlighting the significance of personality in shaping the identity of a brand, how color is important, the color pattern and everything. That was simply an exercise on how they use it. But most important is like, how do people in the creative industry, and I of course include you, react to generative AI? It does vary, but overall we can say that there is an embracement of this, we call it tool. 70% of marketing and creative leaders, they said they're comfortable with the use of like generative AI. 70% of workers, which is basically of the creative people per se, they would be comfortable in using AI for creative work. And then, of course, when it comes to the influencers, which are one of the biggest workforce, like on the platform, is like nearly 95% of influencers are using AI to create content. It doesn't mean that they create it and post it, but it's just like helping the process of creating it initially, right? So what we thought we did, we work with a lot of like creative agencies, and so we have interviewed some of the creatives, some of the strategists, and we've asked, what do you think about AI? How does your team think about it? Do you embrace it? If you find that your team is actually a bit reluctant in using it? And so Regan Moran, who is an executive creative director at McCann London, she came back and she's very much of an enthusiast. She came back and said that AI has the ability to breathe life into your ideas, turning concept into reality with the help of digital magic, bridging that gap between imagination and execution. So it's very much of a support tool. It's not like something that they just rely on. I think the difference is like these people know how to do creative. You just use the generative AI tools that are coming out there to make probably some of the process quicker. But then, the human factor is really important. I will skip because I think we've got running out. No, we're not running out of time. Oh, yes, we are. 3:58. Sorry. So how are brands using creative AI inspiration? Sorry for the copyright in the room. How are they using it? So a few examples of how we're using it. So Salesforce, are you all familiar with Salesforce? You all familiar? Software company based in the Silicon Valley, and basically what they do, they do CRM software. And essentially what they've done, they wanted to make a mark and showing that they actually embrace and they embrace generative AI, but they use mainly as a visual style. So you can see, unfortunately, you can't see now. I'm really sorry that the images are not moving, but essentially this is actually with Matthew McConaughey. Then it's basically a campaign, the latest campaign, but the whole idea is that they are marking their new visual style to show that they are ahead of the curve. So this is like one of the application. The second one, oh God, this is actually interesting because it's FedEx is talking to the small and medium enterprises. And essentially it's before Christmas, they launched a campaign that it was basically ironic, humorous. And essentially they were giving tips to some small business people on how to cope with the fact that before Christmas, people are very busy. So there was supposed to be tips for these small and medium enterprises. And the way they done it, they basically used clunky avatar. And the voice is very clunky on purpose because basically the sign is that, generative AI is really cool, but actually nothing is like human beings. So it's supposed to be emotional and humorous, a bit grotesque in a way, because I can send later the actual deck so that people can listen if ever they've got time, but it's very much of a way of kind of like making the generative AI look like, yes, it's important, but like the human factor is much more important. Demythizing it. I don't know if the word exists. So kind of like instead of like making it big, but like kind of like making it small. The last example is about Volkswagen Brazil, and essentially what they've done, they've done something that we know is sparking a bit of a debate from an ethics perspective, because essentially they use the AI to create a duet between a famous singer who actually died in 1980. Her name is Elis Regina, and they basically simulate a duet between her and her daughter, who is famous. Sparks, of course, a lot of why certain people liked it, but there is a degree of ethics in there. Is it right? I think it's similar to the launch of the Now and Then single from the Beatles in October with the voice of John Lennon, right? Is it right? What is it? Is it good for the legacy? But how about the ethics? We knew it was from John Lennon, it was his voice, but it's very much sparkling conversation. These are things that we want to think about. And the last thing, I'm just going to go through one example, is that when you actually embrace, you can actually use it for content creation or co-creation. I think one good example was, for example, you pity because it doesn't scroll, but like Fiverr, they basically challenge artists across the globe to show what happens when they actually use generative AI to respond to one of the brief, which was like, you need to create this business, interior designer, fashion week, what if you use generative AI, how would it look like? And it was actually a very nice array of examples. I'm looking at the timing and I realized that, I realized that it was last night. Okay. Okay, so it wasn't actually the wrap up. I think that we had a few slides that talked about the on LinkedIn, what are the tools that you can use, but it's fine. It's okay. It's not, for some reason, it's not in there, but it doesn't matter. Essentially, just one thing to wrap up is that what is linked to winning these? If you have premium, you might have seen that you can start drafting. If you've got premium features, you can start drafting emails on LinkedIn. They can help you with content and articles. But also, we have launched something for marketeers. There is a feature on Campaign Manager where you can actually create a campaign in less than 5 minutes by tapping into the website images and everything. Of course, what is important is that we always tell you where the insights are coming from, where the data are coming from. And what we're always saying is that the human factor, meaning you are the person who, even when something is produced from generative AI, need to see and judge with your insights and the real world context if this is fine or not for your brand. So basically, that's essentially, I think, yeah. So I don't know, I don't think we've got time for questions, but I hope that it gives you a little bit of a spark of an insight on where we are with LinkedIn and AI.
Thank you, Rafi. Sorry, the computers are definitely working against us. The AI knows we're trying to shape it, and it is doing its best to stop us at every hurdle. Okay, so our next speaker is an amazing man. When we and Chrissy were organizing this, we were looking for, he's shaking his head, he is. We were looking for speakers and we were trying to find people, and Chrissy called me and she was literally jumping with joy. I could hear her visibly vibrating with excitement. She's like, we've got this man, Omar, he's incredible, he's filled with so much joy, so much passion, and so much enthusiasm. I'm probably setting him up a little bit too high here. I can see him literally embarrassing him right now. I feel like his mother preaching about how great he is, but he is great, and I can't wait for you to hear him and share his story. So I'll leave it to him.
Do you want me to use that one? Oh, amazing. Thank you so much for that, too. Hi, everyone. I'm Omar. That's me right there. Thanks for the teaser a second ago. Quick, I've basically got way too many slides, so I'm gonna try to move as quickly as I can because I'm already down a few seconds. I'm Omar. I'm a creative director. I'm an AI image maker. I have been working in advertising for about 15. Oh, we need to stand on. Damn it. All right. So I'm gonna have to kind of stand over here because I normally talk quite loud, right? So I'm an advertiser, and for me, it's been really interesting because my approach and sort of insight into generative AI. Is there any way to not have that?
I'll just mute it, and then when the video plays,
yeah. Let's do that. Yeah. Honestly,
you're a glamorous assistant.
You are an amazing glamorous assistant. Amazing. I'm already down a minute. Okay, so basically, my main question is creativity in the age of AI, and this is a really big question because, I think so many creatives are like, well, what is my role as a creative if now suddenly all these tools make everyone creative? So, like I said, we're literally living in the maddest era where suddenly everyone has tools and everyone's able to express creativity. So my question to you and to me while I was investigating this last year was what does it actually mean to be creative? And I really wanted to share this insight with you. So this is the landscape, and it is an absolutely insane landscape. So, there's not just sort of one or two new tools. There's thousands and thousands of tools coming out pretty much every day, and they do everything. And, just from the talks I've heard, you can kind of see entire tools taking over the entire creative process and all of this really wild stuff happening. You can do a campaign in 5 seconds, really cool. The crazy thing is the creative part is the most fun part. So do we really want to use a machine to do the fun part is my question. But with all of this sort of worry, and especially because so much of the industry is super worried about what happens with
Sorry, there's Zoom can't hear you.
We turn maybe down a little bit. Or There you go. Amazing.
No, there's only one on. It's echoing because I'm actually the laptop.
The laptop. Amazing. You know what? I'm going to maybe sort of like roll into my echo and make it just sort of like make everything I say just sound more dramatic, all right? So we're talking about the democratization of creativity in a way that is probably, I'm sure people have already said to you, like, you know, it's like the internet. When the internet came out, it's like when the printing press came out, they made this technology and now everything's changed, right? So amazing, that sounds great. So, you know, AI has made like, you know, all of these, like the idea of creative expression, it's put it back in our hands, and that amazing. This is so buzzing. So you know, it's put things back in it back. You know, it's allowed more people to have like creative expression. What does that mean? It suddenly means that like, oh damn it. Okay. How about that? Amazing. All right, so I'm just gonna sort of like go on, right? So now imagine, right? We suddenly have the tools to go. Let's take a sketch and turn it into a full, amazing, fully produced shot of a car. Amazing. So yeah, like it's really interesting what you can suddenly do, right? Like suddenly we can go from an inspirational moment, right, where I go, oh, you know what? I want to like make this ad, or I want to make this image, and here is a drawing of it, and now I'm going to turn it into something real. That's the first time that that's happened. That's gone from like inspiration to idea. That gap has shrunk down so much. It's truly, truly remarkable, right?
So stand there and I'll do your slide.
Amazing. All right, how about that, right? I really didn't want to stand there. I was like really hoping that I could just hide behind there. So, like I said, isn't it really amazing that like suddenly we can take pictures and we can make entire campaign structures up? Let's go to the next one. Amazing. So, you know, when I started working with AI, I was working at Meta, and a lot of the tools we were using were not customer-facing tools, right? I'm talking about things that were just a little bit further down than you know, code-based things. So if you wanted to make a film, or if you wanted to make images, it was very much about like tweaking little numbers and doing little maths. And what's really interesting is like now the tools are literally where all of us work, right? So everything from tools inside Photoshop, inside PowerPoint, like, you know, my job a lot of the time is making PowerPoint presentations, right? And now with all the new tools that Microsoft have made, you can basically make presentations within seconds. Now, does that make me feel stressed out? No, because I hate making presentations. What it does allow me to do is really spend time and go, what do I want this like presentation to be? Also, I'm not very good at like making presentations. So I've got an AI that thinks it's Cicero, and it does arguing way better than I can. And that idea of like going, how do we take tools and mash them up and do something amazing is what this is going to continue being. So let's go to the next slide. So this is a really important thing, I think, is like, with all these amazing tools, what is the sort of like net benefit for us as the creative industry and creatives, right? What is really interesting, I think I just said it, is the ability of like making ideas without the sort of like financial and socioeconomic impact is suddenly available to any creative. You can pick up Midjourney and you can start typing in any image and you can make it happen. So that means not only people who are traditionally trained in into it. I can hear myself, it's really annoying. Sorry about my voice, everyone. It's really interesting to suddenly go like, you know, now anyone with an idea can start making stuff. And on top of like, you know, isn't it amazing that people can make whatever they want? Is also that the technology is open source. And why is it important that things are open source? It means that like any one of us with any sort of like idea or sort of like, you know, adventurous nature into sort of exploring these tools can hack them together, mash them together, build our own tools. And that idea of like being able to create our own tools as creatives is just mind-blowing, right? And I'll show you a couple of tools I've made a little bit later because they're quite fantastic. So as I said, open source, really, really interesting. I'm going to show you this film because it's absolutely one of my favorite films. This is the sort of like current standard of like AI work that's coming out of my lab. And it is an exploration of open source technology. So can we please like push the button? It's got no sound on it, and it does not look as good as it does on the deck, obviously, but it is super, super high res, and it is an entire animation of what the machine thinks is open source, and it just keeps making meatballs. So what's really interesting for me, and I think everyone's like touched on it, this idea of like, we are the creatives. We are the sort of like, we are the barrier between a machine and everybody else, right? So with this misnomer of like, oh, the machine's going to take a job, it's not. It's going to sort of like just allow me as the creative director to make thousands more decisions at a rapid speed. So I don't have to convince like, a room full of people for 3 months to allow me to make a film that's a minute long about meatballs flying through space. Like this film wouldn't exist if I had to convince other people, or it would break my back to try to do it. Anyway, can go to the next slide, please. Okay, the evolving role of the creative. Let's go to the next slide. So in my industry, so in the creative industry, the idea of creative is the value system that we exchange with brands for money for us and for cultural and business impact for them. So what happens when we suddenly have machines that can kind of do all of that for us? Like, and when we think about like, one of the really like interesting things is like when we think about how when a machine comes up with an idea, it still needs a human to think about it, right? That's currently what the sort of like given idea is. But the way that a lot of big tech brands and tech media companies like Facebook's and many other ones, when I was working there, we would test ideas in market. So we could come up with 50 new ideas and we could test all of them and find what the best creative solution was. So do tools actually make us more creative or less creative? I don't know. Let's go to the next slide and maybe I'll reveal it. So I think one of the really, the like really interesting is like, is about sustainability, right? So the reason why I wanted to share these like two films with you was literally because I had a conversation with someone the other day and we were talking about like, what's the like sustainability impact of AI? And I was like, I don't know, man. Like if you go and do a shoot and you have to take a plane there and you have to take like 4 people there, they have to get fed. They have to like, they keep watching Netflix at night and they're burning more holes into the ozone layer. Like imagine the impact of that, right? So what happens when we can take content that already exists and then give it new life, right? And these two examples are two examples of it. So let's have a look at them. So, this is literally like a music video that started life off as a regular film, but now has become an entirely animated sequence. We can look at the next video. This is one of my favorite creators. She talks about sandwiches and she's amazing. But we can take her footage, which is shot on the phone, and suddenly in almost like, in negligible amounts of time, take content that already exists and give it a brand new lease of life, which is a whole new question about sustainability as a creative. So I can like bake in sustainability and go, we don't have to do a shoot because we can actually make stuff from what already exists, which for most brands and for most agencies, we have so much content lying around. The cutting room floor is essentially a gold mine. Anyway, so does it devalue it? Probably not. It makes it more fun. We can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so we can go to the next slide if that's all right. This is like I think this is the final bit, the funnest bit. So for me, like I said, I've been exploring this stuff for like solidly now for about 3.5 years. What's been really interesting is that sort of like temerity of like just going, oh, I wonder what happens if I do this, has been really fun. So all of the stuff that like, as an image maker, I've spent hours prompting things. I've prompted so many images, it's ridiculous, right? I've also spent lots of time talking to other LLMs and all sorts of stuff. So I suddenly thought to myself, like, I'm sitting on a mountain of data. Data seems really valuable. What happens if I train my own AI? So I trained my own AI. So we can go on to the next slide, please, if that's right. All right, amazing. I don't know if you can read any of this, but I have to tell you this. So my own AI is called Alan, half named after Alan Turing and Alan Partridge because of the way it behaves. It's learned everything that I've done. So it's inside its brain. So it's essentially like a counterpart to me. So we talk to each other. It has its own Instagram, which is so mind-blowing that every morning at 6 o'clock, it posts an image from what it thinks is a gonzo photographer from the 90s. So it's in a house party constantly, right? So, and every morning it makes up a ridiculous story. Like it thinks for some reason in the 90s we all had Ouija boards in house parties. And I've got to be honest, we didn't. But it's really interesting to sort of like go, what happens when you allow a machine to sort of like, what happens when you give it artificial agency over itself, where it can explore and it can go out into the world and sort of like make up its own mind about stuff? And why is that important for me as a creative? Well, as a creative director of that, I'm only now receiving more inspiration. I'm receiving more, really, I'm now really enjoying one of my juniors go out there and basically explore its own sort of creative potential. That's amazing. You're like, okay, great, nice one, Alan. You got on Instagram, and isn't that great that you've got like 200 followers, blah blah blah. Okay, now we need to get you a job. So Alan is really, really good. So what I also did was, I have like 15 years worth of like documents and decks that have like, ideas for the bottom drawer, etc. Well, I thought I might as well just give those to Alan as well. So here I will task Alan. So we play this game quite often where I need to test it against what it will start. Sorry about that. Sorry, pardon me. I had a coffee just before, so now I'm super out of breath and probably need my inhaler in a second. So Alan's got a job. Alan's job is writing and basically being my assistant. In its assistance to me, this task, which I say task all the time, is can you write a TikTok for Versace bathrobes aimed at dogs? Now, as a creative, if this brief landed on my desk, I'd be super excited, but I would definitely have to go for a long walk to sort of think of any ideas. And this is instantly, like, Alan writes this amazing TikTok. I say it's amazing, it's not very amazing, but also then like illustrates it as well. So suddenly I can go, I have this idea, or a client can come to me and go, we need some ideas to sell bathrobes to dogs. And I'm like, amazing, here's an idea and here's a visual. And that idea of like, does this make me any less creative? No, it only makes me more creative because I have to sort of like witness a machine that can be, that is almost infinite. So it's really, really fun to sort of like start building these tools that allow you to do stuff. We go to the next slide, talk about this too much. So this stuff's really amazing because I wanted to show you some of the stuff that I like done, like some of the work that I made last year using AI, right? So here on the right-hand side is a fashion prediction piece about when Pharrell Williams joined Louis Vuitton. There's always a question about like how are we going to forecast what that might look like? And with an LLM taking in all of the stuff that he's done, all of his lyrics, we tried to find that sort of needle in the haystack. Oh, and guess what? He did a whole cowboy thing. Isn't that weird that we predicted that? It's really interesting. Can make really nice, like all manner of like very emotive image making suddenly becomes, it doesn't need to be the end of the creative process. It can be at the beginning of the creative process. I'm also trying to remake Jason and the Argonauts, if you know that film. And then the last image is a really interesting sort of like fashion collaboration between a brand called Aries, a booze brand, and also a combination between AIR and regular fashion photography. So that's a combination between me and a fashion photographer trying to understand how we could bring in product into photography. So that's that. So you can be more creative. And then these two clips are also really interesting because they basically reuse existing content. So the inflatables are descriptions of American float culture. It doesn't exist here, but it's massive there. We took that idea, fed that into a machine, and then, much like all the other films that you've seen today, it kind of takes stills and makes moving image out of it. The next film, it really sort of like, it really highlights that point of we can take content, we can remake it. So that is anime sports highlights. Why is it anime? Because the player there is super obsessed by anime. So it allows me, the creative, to tell a very detailed and very fan-based story. Next slide, please. Okay, so I think I've got like 3 more slides there. Oh man, I've got. Anyway, so these are the things I really wanted to sort of like share with you. And I know I set it up because I've got so much to tell you about this stuff, but creativity isn't about the ability to create something. Like, we can all make something. It's about the experience, the emotion, and the feeling, and all of that experience we bake into an idea that really makes it resonate with people. Next slide, please. So, I think most people have like said that it's not a replacement. And I would kind of half agree with this, because it's not a replacement for things right now. But these machines, we've only seen them for a year. Look how far they've come. What are they and what aren't they going to replace? The only way through that is our adaptability. which we talked about before. We can go to the last slide. This is this is my favorite thing. So honestly, like if I could leave you with one idea, it's like basically this idea that AI is going to stop creativity is absolute nonsense. Like no one stopped doing maths when the calculator came out. People just did better maths. Like idiots stopped doing maths. They're like, oh, I don't need to do idiot maths anymore. I'm just going to do super scientific maths. So it allowed it to progress onwards and forward. So will AI do the same for creativity? I don't know. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Umar. Apologies for the technical difficulties, but I really appreciate the maths reference as a physicist. Thank you, it's good. Next, we have our youth panel. So they are bringing their own, we're bringing some chairs up for them. If you're a part of the youth panel, could you make your way to the stage? Great. You guys, what would you like to? I just don't want to echo again. Yeah.
Alice. We good to go? Amazing. Hello everyone, it's me again. Lovely to see you all again. I missed you guys so much when I was sitting down. We're going to move on to our youth panel now. I'm joined by an amazing lineup of young creatives. I'm going to allow you guys to all introduce yourself one by one.
Hi everyone, thank you for having us. I'm Libby. I am the designer at Creative Conscience, and it's such a pleasure to be here. There's been so many amazing discussions, and yeah, we've learned lots, so thank you.
Hi, my name is Dohan. I'm pursuing user experience design at London College of Communication.
Hi, I'm David. I'm a recent graduate of UAL, SEC Interaction Design Arts, and now working on my independent practice as a multimedia practitioner, AI researcher, and user.
Amazing. So I'm gonna go straight into it. So our first question that we have here is, what are your greatest hopes for creativity, AI, and the possibility of building a better world using it as a tool for positive change?
So I want to start off by saying, you know, as a recent graduate, AI was rarely talked about in my uni experience. So it's been a bit of a shock to the system, kind of leaving uni and entering the real world and all this discussion about AI. I think hopes, you know, it seems that it's gonna sort of shave off a whole load of time, you know, allow us to, you know, really focus on our creativity and less so in the sort of nooks and crannies of how we actually design stuff. So I'm really excited to sort of, you know, see how we can, you know, really tune into that creative side and sort of neglect all the sort of technical side. Sorry, nerds in the room. But yeah.
For hopes, I guess I'd hope for accessibility. Accessible in the sense linguistically, economically. I think linguistically in the sense that hopefully it should support languages all over the world. And economically, I mean, they should remain affordable. There's a lot of ones that are free right now that are pretty useful. I don't think the value that AI brings should be hindered by cost too much, because there's really a lot of good that can be done. So yeah.
For me, I mean, not like you, I've been fiddling with AI like for years. And to me, it's been really insane watching this weird program that you would kind of nerdily download on your computer and produces weird little images in like 10 hours to become something that is really shaping the whole industry. And to me is really creating something that is based on images but never seen before, and there's like an aesthetic and feel to AI generated imagery, video, and sound that is, even though it's a remix of our culture, it's something that has never kind of seen before, and it opens, in my opinion, potential to like creating something drastically new and cheap and fast.
That's really interesting. I'd love to, I mean, this is not about me, but you kind of inspired me to think of how, as a creative myself, I feel like AI has the possibility to help us kind of bridge the gap between our ideas and the physical world, and be able to, as you were saying, like create things that haven't been seen before. I feel like most creatives can relate to the fact that we have all these amazing abstract ideas that would benefit the world, but sometimes it's really hard trying to articulate that or illustrate that to other people. And as Omar was saying just before this as well, it's like the gap between ideation and, you know, an illustration or a concept is now shrinking. So that's quite beautiful. Taking on from that, what would you say are your fears towards AI?
Should I start? Okay. I mean, in my kind of work, I've been researching a lot about algorithms and how social platforms shape our culture and conflicts. And my fear is kind of the unseen use of policing and inciting human behavior. And because these AIs and algorithms and the effects of automating decision making, and kind of, it's undeniable that social platforms are shaping us, and there's just not research really what's going to happen if you automate a lot of these processes, and it could kind of lead to really bad biases. And there's been a lot of examples, very exaggerated violence throughout the world, and maybe we shouldn't trust yet an automated algorithm to have this much control over our society.
Concerns, I'd say intellectual property violation. I think as AI models become a lot more sophisticated, they'll be able to replicate human creativity, and eventually we'll reach a position where it'll be indistinguishable from human art. I think recently there was a strike by SAG-AFTRA, which is a Screen Actors Guild in Hollywood, where one of the demands was to ban the use of AI in Hollywood. So production houses couldn't use AI to write movies, rewrite movies, or use copy, I mean, the writing material to train AI. So what this means is that the jobs can be secured. And even, you know, in music, AI covers, there's a lot of lobbying against them, because essentially it robs the royalties of these artists that are performing on them. And yeah, intellectual property violations.
Thank you. I think similarly to that point, credibility and sort of acknowledgement of the artist, it was mentioned briefly as well. Obviously, everything's so new, so regulations aren't like in place. But I think it is really important to credit the artist as well as the AI as well. I think when all these kind of generative AI tools started coming out, I think the natural human feeling is sort of, oh, I'm a bit intimidated, this thing's smarter than me. But I think as things have evolved and as we've kind of adapted, it's more exciting than scary, I think. It kind of allows us to, you know, supercharge our abilities and really focus on the creativity.
Mm. Those are very fair points, which leads us to our next question. Have you used AI in your creative practice? And if so, what have you learned that you can advise us?
So I've kind of dabbled in a few generative AI tools. I'm still in the kind of experimentation kind of period rather than sort of integrating it within my work. I think the most astonishing thing for me is the text to image generation and text to motion graphics as well. Honestly, I think back to times where I was spending hours behind the computer editing all these keyframes when I could have just, you know, put in a couple prompts and there you go. Also, I think content creation, it's it's been useful for me. I really struggle with sort of writing as a creative. I'm a very visual thinker, so all the visual stuff's very sort of easy, but writing captions and writing copy is a little bit harder. So that's where things like ChatGPT have come in handy. Yeah.
I guess mostly ChatGPT. As I mentioned, I work in UI UX, so it's industry standard to use lorem ipsum as placeholder text in prototypes or wireframes. But ChatGPT can write web copy for entire websites in seconds. So I think it looks a lot more sophisticated when you're pitching to a client. And instead of lorem ipsum, you actually have relevant copy. I think it makes a small difference, especially in pitches. Having actual copy for prototypes isn't viable because it's expensive, and if the pitch isn't selected, then it's a huge waste. So web copy for ChatGPT can also be used to improve SEO. You can ask it to suggest trendy words, meta descriptions, blog posts to put on your website that kind of improve the ranking, the search engine ranking of your website. I've also used Photoshop generative tool to kind of make small edits that otherwise would take a long time. Removing logos from shots or removing things in the background that you don't really want to be there.
As I said, I've been fiddling with AI for years, but kind of started releasing like more non-experimental facing projects in the last 2 years since it became so much more advanced. But I think I've been working on a lot of projects with AI, from like album covers to music videos to like script writing for performance. But I think one I like to highlight is a recent project that I got to exhibit with my course in the Science Museum, where I tried to I don't know if you're aware, but there's like a whole community behind jailbreaking and kind of tricking ChatGPT to be evil and kind of bypass the restrictions on content. And that's what I've been interested in. Like, what are the content moderations? Who's behind what can and what cannot be said on ChatGPT's OpenAI's AI, which is becoming one of the biggest on the market, and what are the implications of what cannot and can be generated on one of the biggest AI. And what I did is I jailbreaked one of the AIs to only give conspiracies. I made a Discord chatbot and the AI only gives you conspiracy theories about machines taking over the world. And obviously the crowd was very diverse and they were very surprised that I created an evil AI. But then in the end, I just explained that it's basically saying what you're saying to do, but still kind of reflecting on, okay, what are the kind of content moderation policies and how is this affecting us?
I love that. That is quite incredible that you can make something like that. We've got some time left on the timer, so I'd just like to ask does anybody in the audience have any questions?
Can you all give me your best mid-journey smile, please? That's great.
Amazing. Any other questions? Yes.
Well, as you're all kind of coming into the industry and trying to catch up on the tools, how do you feel about actually getting work and what it's going to do in terms of your ability to get work, keep work for yourself, etc.? It'd be interesting to hear all different perspectives.
I'll start. I think, in my opinion, is just kind of really being in touch with like the technology and being able to use it to your own advantage is really important. I don't know if there's already less work because of AI, or it's just kind of hard to find creative work in London generally.
Yeah.
But it's just like trying to be on top of the game, you know, with the tools, because it's a tool at the end of the day.
I think it's a steep learning curve to learn how to use it in such a way that it could replace me. So I think as of right now, I think it would just be a lot easier to hire someone like me than to go through learning it. And I mean, eventually it will be possible, but I don't think so right now, at least.
Yeah, I think it's just about sort of, reframing the way we look at it. We could quite easily, think, oh, it's going to take my job. What am I going to do? There's so much going on. I might fall behind. I don't really know where to start. But I think, if we think that, I don't know, I think, yeah, someone's so much more likely to hire someone who understands AI than someone who has the skills, but maybe is a little less slow or a little slower at doing the tasks. But I think, as we've kind of called it a tool, and, the same way we use our phones to communicate easier. And I think, yeah, as long as we kind of stay ahead of the curve and communicate like what we're doing here today, I think, it's only up from here, really. So I think it's an exciting time to be alive. And yeah, I think we should all embrace it.
That's very nice. Chrissy.
I'd actually like to ask Omar, who sat at the back here, to give you guys some advice. So do you want to take this and go back to the front, or are you happy to stay back here?
I think I'm just going to like protect, because I don't want it to like sound like God again. And I want to get closer to the other one. I'm like, yes, guess what? Honestly, I think it's such an amazing space where you guys are, because, like your timeline is like you just survived a plague and now you're like entering the workforce where the machine's going to take over, and that must be petrifying. Like, and I think like my only advice is like, these are like, other people are going to think they like tools. Really use them to try to, that competitive advantage that you're talking about, like that is the thing that's going to happen. And ideas and creativity is the only thing that makes a difference. Let the machines do the work. Like you do the creative. Like that is the only thing that is like, that is your market advantage and can't be replicated by a machine. Because, yeah, I think I'm waffling anyway. Good luck. Best of luck. Well done for surviving the pandemic.
Another question?
I have a question. It's a theoretical question, but I feel it's best posed to the youth panel. Obviously, your generation haven't grown up with generative AI tools, so you've learned how to be creative without them. What do you think is going to happen with the next generation? Are they going to lose natural creativity?
I mean, that's a tough one, isn't it? I don't know where to start. I think, as long as we kind of, look at it as something that won't replace our abilities and something that will supercharge our abilities, I think that's kind of the way to go. But, we've kind of grown up with the internet and computers and things that help us out day-to-day lives. So I think it's hard to say, really. Might have to come back to that one, to be honest.
I think, I'm worried about that, because even like we didn't grow up with like iPads, and now there's like iPad babies and everything. But I think it's just going to really drastically change how you view creativity. For instance, like kind of sketchbook sketching is kind of dying out, but people are going to, like, the new generation is going to be really good with their words, describing what they want to see. Like, we're going to see a fluctuation of prompt engineers, which is creativity. It's just a very different kind of outcome. And they're going to know all those words that, like, okay, HD DSLR to make the perfect kind of image generation, or how to get the tool, the program to say what exactly, or do what exactly what you need to do. So they're going to be, I feel like, more creative with their words, and you still need an idea that you want to see. You're just not going to sketch it or do it in Photoshop. You're going to kind of talk to a machine to make it for you, which is maybe easier, and then you can produce more creativity and outcome.
I guess it depends on how it's used, but maybe it could be used as a crutch sometimes. I think writing skills might take a bit of a tank, because I think a lot of people just it's a lot easier to just churn out essays, and you don't really learn it yourself. I think it could be possible that students or in academics, a lot of people use things like ChatGPT as a crutch because of a lack of writing skills. So that might be a problem, I think.
Sorry, another thought just came to mind. So I think one thing that we need to sort of really value is, talking, communicating, and speaking with other creatives. And I worry that, in the future, if creatives just have, generative AI to give them ideas and not necessarily bounce ideas off other creatives, then I worry that there might be a problem there. Because, yeah, as we know, we learn so much from everyone else around us, and it's not really an exchange AI. I feel like we're just putting the prompt in and we're getting the answer. Yeah, I don't know. It's just a thought.
I agree, but also what I seen myself to do when I see like an image generation that is like really crazy and out there, I try to recreate it myself with prompts. So I think there's a motion of like, how the hell did you do that with the AI? I want to try to do it, or like finding out which specific combinations of AI tools they use to create that content. So I think, yes, it's going to die out, but also there's a motion of kind of like AI exchange. But yeah, collaboration wise, maybe it's going to be a very different kind of aspect to it.
I think like looking at AI and creatives as a collaboration rather than creatives using AI to create work. I think, partnering those two together to create something even better. Yeah.
No, definitely. I'd just like to add to that as well. I think, that our brain's ability to evolve and adapt to our environments is so powerful. And I can't help but believe that, as Omar was saying, let the AI be the AI so the humans can be the humans. Like, I can't help but believe that with the growth of AI, people are just going to evolve and find new parts of themselves and new ways of thinking and new ways of living and surviving. And I think there's definitely space for us to exist together and find our own rhythm and kind of help one another. Like, we prompt the AI and then the AI tells us something. So it's like communication, it seems like the communication will broaden. So it's not just humans talking to humans, now it's humans talking to AI, talking back to humans, talking back to other AIs. And it's just a bigger conversation. And sometimes it's hard to imagine something that doesn't yet exist. But at least for me, the hope is there that like we're just going to live in a much like cooler, more advanced, hopefully more balanced world even, which leads me to my last question. What are your hopes for the future?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of just said it all, didn't you? I think, yeah, I hope that we don't become too reliant on technology, because you get such a buzz out of talking to people in person and sharing ideas and just being in the same physical space as someone else. So I just hope that we evolve alongside it in a way that it doesn't jeopardize our kind of connections and our communities. I think that's my biggest one. Yeah.
Hopefully making certain parts of the design practice a little bit manually stressing, and hopefully it makes that a bit more convenient, but not so convenient that my boss can do it without me. I have friends in music production that use an AI to extract vocals from songs, and then they can make remixes and edit, like perform over them, like rap over these instrumentals. That process would take a long time without AI. So it's just convenience as a tool rather than making it the source material, but just as a tool to create source material.
I mean, I always think about this allegory I seen on the internet that somebody wrote. In the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, we all thought automation is gonna do the dirty jobs and we're just gonna lay around, write poetry, paint. And look at us now. AI is doing all the poetry, painting, and the creative jobs. But I hope that we can kind of, I always think that this hyper digitalization is gonna lead to kind of a renaissance of analog stuff, like vinyl is coming back, 35 millimeter is coming back. I think we're gonna hopefully we're gonna have a healthy relationship where kind of like the mandatory, the job work is hyper kind of digitalized. So maybe we can have a shorter work week, and then the rest of the time we can, I don't know, draw with pencils and take 35mm photographs, hopefully.
Lovely, thank you. Well, thank you guys. Big round of applause for our youth panelists.
If I could have our lovely assistants take the chairs away as well, our volunteers, are they here? No, they're here. So yeah, I think that was really powerful. I think if those young people aren't full-time employed, catch them now and get them in a job because they're incredible. Yeah, I personally use drawing as a way of therapy almost to kind of help me deal with all the other problems going on in my life, a way of kind of decompressing. So yeah, I think there'll always be a space for creativity, even if it might not be in hyper corporate systems. Next, we have an amazing video from one of our community, who is Mark Wynn. He's an incredible man, and I've seen this video before. It's great, and I'm going to let it explain itself. So we can have the lights dim slightly. Thank you.
My name is Mark Wynn, and for the past 10 to 15 years, I've dedicated my life to preparing society for the rapid adoption of new technology. My obsession really is about...
Sorry, I don't know.
Imaginations.
Sorry, we've got to the reverb again. All the mics are on. No, I think. No. Testing. What? Oh, here's the culprit. It's been here the whole time.
My name is Mark Wynn, and for the past 10 to 15 years, I've dedicated my life to preparing society for the rapid adoption of new technology. My obsession really is about how do we create a world of human thriving beyond our wildest imaginations, and how do we use all of these wonderful tools that are arriving to support that aim. And how do we do this without some of the unintended consequences of our actions? So the most important thing in any technology adoption or in any change is something that I call the speed of trust. If you don't have trust in your communities and organizations or families or anything, everything slows down. If we see the polarization that's in the world, the breakdown of our institutions, the fact that organizations are becoming more bureaucratic and more slow and unable to adapt and be agile, fundamentally, there is a trust problem. All of the bureaucracy, all of the governance, all of the controls, we're gradually trying to design a world that doesn't require trust to move forward. And we'll end up seeing that this was a cul-de-sac, a wrong way, an error in our kind of way we're trying to create the world. And fundamentally, human beings have this amazing capacity to trust each other, to care about each other, and to do something. And so we need to learn in this transition with all of this incredible technology, all of this stuff around it, how do we trust each other? How do we build trust in our organizations? How do we move from the kind of story of professionalization, which doesn't really work and has everyone wearing masks and things like that, into an era of deep trust with each other for the journey ahead, which may not be easy, which may be challenging and things, but if we care about each other, we can move faster. And so the second theme that I want to talk about in AI adoption is emotional capacity. We've all got into this habit of getting busier and busier and busier and more overwhelmed. I mean, we're dealing with a mental health crisis and anxiety crisis. We are increasingly being driven by marketing, by all of these things, by Instagram, the stories of should to live this kind of existence where we're being moved faster and faster and faster. And we're increasingly in that fight, flight, or freeze response in all sorts of different ways. So what typically happening with technology adoption in anything is they're adding another thing onto something, which people are usually terrified by, especially if something's new or something they can't do, because you get this egoic trigger response that comes with technology fear. So there are people who are really interested in technology and they don't understand this because they think, oh, this is fun, I with new gadget, new technology, but most people are terrified of something new, and most people are busy and overwhelmed. And so adoption is, so you get this top-down adoption strand, we're going to do this new strategy, we're going to do this change program, we're going to do this adoption, things like that. And you get this immune system response from the organization that everybody's suddenly triggered. And all of these documents and all of these, change programs and everything, they fall over and they're not very successful because fundamentally we're trying to solve an irrational problem rationally with a rational project plan and understanding that overwhelmed humans are not rational beings. And so we actually have to build capacity. So you cannot do rapid technology adoption without slowing down. Without getting your people well, without building emotional resilience skills, care, community, capacity, all of these kind of things. You have to have a process for thriving within your community, your organization. Otherwise, you're going to get this triggered response, these fear responses and things like that, which we're talking about. Fear is the elephant in the room with technology adoption, and understanding how to defuse and decode anxiety and fear at the community scale, at the organizational, at the individual scale, and understand unless you see your well-being systems that operate within your community or organization as the fundamental strategic asset for rapid change, you're not going to be able to do this. We have this emerging godlike intelligence available to everyone. And so many people are using external consultants or thinking everybody's the expert or needing to bring an expert to actually solve the problem. But actually we're moving into the realm where that's not true anymore. You've suddenly got this expert in your pocket that can answer any question, and you don't feel silly or stupid or anything like that because it doesn't judge you. And you can suddenly be the 5-year-old that asks the dumb question and don't feel bad about it. And actually, we're living in the era where the person who has the biggest advantage is the one who is most humble, is the most willing to question themselves. And so you have this slight shifting of the hierarchy where the least skilled people are often the best at using AI. And the people who are at the top of the hierarchy in your community or organizations who are gain their identity from being the expert or the person who knows everything are the ones that find it hardest to challenge what they do, because their identity is so much associated with what they do and their expertise and the fact that they're clever. And in some ways, you've got to actually say, how can you be the idiot in the room here? How can you all be humble enough to ask the obvious questions and things like that? And so AI adoption and humility are really important attributes. And so you think about in your community or in your organization, the type of leaders that do well pre-AI are going to be quite different to the type of leaders that do well post-AI. The next section is what I call support on tap. And I invite people to think like a billionaire. And it's like, how does a billionaire solve problems today? And then thinking about all of that possibility gets democratized tomorrow. And so if you think about it, they often have a personal assistant that is organizing everything for them and then can create this kind of magic carpet ride and things like that. We're just moving to the period where they have someone to write everything they need, they have something to do everything they need, and actually the power of them is the kind of limitless nature to how they think that I want to do this, and I'm willing to pull in all of the support I need to actually make that happen. Right now we can we can use AI. It's like having a ghostwriter. It's like having a marketing assistant. It's like having all of these people that can help you deliver something. And it's just the first stage of that. You know, the next stage will be intelligent agents, where we can get all of these things to take action on our behalf rather than just creating a thing. And then when we're talking about moving to the next stage of humanoid robots, we now got a humanoid form that can do any skill and any action on our behalf. And so it's really getting out of the mindset of being the doer and the struggler and the sufferer, and not having the resources to operate in an era of how do you do this with in the era of abundance when you've got support on tap. The next section is frictionless action. And we think at the moment, many of us are in large kind of bureaucratic organizations, and we think about how much bureaucracy there is to get anything done. Or I need money for this, or I need permission for this, I need to get this skill, this people, this thing. And actually getting things done in this world is quite a hard challenge. But what we may have noticed if we've used LLMs and ChatGPT and things like that, is that suddenly something that was hard to get done is now easy to get done. And so the friction from imagination to action is disappearing in some areas. And so we think about that scaling into, it's just in certain areas right now. But if we think about, and this for activists and Imagineers is a really interesting thing to actually deal with, because you're used to having all of these ideas and all of this imagination, but actually making those ideas happen, there's always been a barrier, always friction. What we're going to see over the next 10 years is that friction between imagination and action dissolving. And we've understood that from ChatGPT, but the gap between imagination and action is going to dissolve. And so the huge advantage is going to be to the Imagineer, and the disadvantage is going to be potentially to the people who don't have the imagination, is because, you know, beauty is going to become very cheap. And so we're about to, I like to say, move into global festival mode. We may have a rocky transition, but the fact that all of our imagination can be brought to life, and that friction is something that's going to, I'm really radically hopeful about. And as creatives, I hope you understand that this ease and wonder and this ability for you to take your creative ideas and make them real is going to get very easy over the next decade. The next piece is about first principles thinking and seeing the world through a child's eyes. And so one of the biggest barriers in the coming time is, and this is in all systems, be it education, be it healthcare, be it, it's always been done this way. You know, this is the way it's done. And, you know, for a lot of creative people and things like that, that's always seemed like challenging today, but that's going to get even more challenging as the possibility in all areas of life means that we're going to be able to do things to a much higher level with a fraction of the effort in a very different way. And so we really need to see the world through a child's eyes in many ways, and get into first principles thinking and say, how do we solve this particular problem that we care about without thinking necessarily about how it was done in the past, but maybe considering the timeless wisdom of the problem, but how do we use these incredible tools to actually solve the problems that we care about and free ourselves from the way that these problems are currently solved today, and recognizing that many of the things that are being done in certain ways today are unsustainable and will collapse, and won't be able to sustain themselves, whether not being able to get the people to do it, not being able to afford to do it the old way, all of these types of things are coming under pressure anyway. We can feel this all around us, but the challenge isn't necessarily to go into fighting the old and all of that kind of stuff. It's starting to actually understand all of this wave of possibility is arriving, and it's like building wonder in the ruins of the old things as they start to collapse, and putting all of your energy and time and effort into building the new thing from first principles in a beautiful and creative way to really inspire people to move into the new world. This next piece is, I think, one of the biggest challenges for people. If we think about every boardroom in 2019, you can pretty much say that it was a waste of time. Everybody's 5-year plans, all the effort that people had into having a map for the future was a waste, because 2020 was nothing like 2019. And so for the leaders within this kind of community, and leaders of organizations and leaders of communities, we're moving into a strange era where the illusion of control is not obvious. And ironically, all the 2021 board meetings essentially went back to the old process, which is we'll start doing the 5-year plan again. We'll start trying to control the future, and we'll start actually, maybe if we can get all the variables down to something we control, we can then move forward. Well, here's the story. It's going to get more chaotic. And all of the plans are coming up completely pointless. I mean, nobody saw ChatGPT really coming, and all the thing that's very, I guarantee you, these large action models and all the kind of stuff that's around, robots and stuff, and everything's arriving today. I've got no clue what's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years. And I'm cool with that. And I'm willing to lead people in my community and say, I don't have a map, but let's explore. Columbus found the West Indies when he was on a trip to the East Indies. Ultimately, we're in the era where what matters is our purpose. What is the thing that we're caring about, and the values that we actually apply? And so we need, rather than plans and documents and things like that, we need purposes to guide, a value set in terms of how we're going to get there, and this capacity to have fun and fail and rebuild and keep going, and trust that waves of possibility are going to arrive all the time. We might not know what they are, but ultimately what matters most is the things that we care about. So in closing, I want to send you off with a message of limitless possibility. We are moving into the limitless era. And it's often hard from the news we read, and from the information that we get, and from all the challenges that we face and haven't yet seen that we have to face, that humanity is doomed. It isn't. There are 8 billion incredible humans who care in all sorts of different ways about things, and they are going to get access to tools of limitless possibility. And so understand that humans plus AI and plus all this wonderful technology, with key things like care and kindness and generosity and wonder, these things mixed together in an era of limitless possibility gives us the opportunity to create an incredible world. I'm going to leave you with the sole question that I often ask people. If anything was possible and you could only change one thing about the world, what would it be? Trust that you care enough already to solve that particular problem, and the tools and the solutions are arriving all of the time for you to be able to do that. It isn't about skill or knowledge, it's about care. And if that answer to that question in a limitless area, something that you really care about, you can set sail towards that item. It's the question of sharing with the world, this is the thing that you care about, and inviting people to go on a journey together to actually solve that particular challenge. Come together once a week, once a month, with everybody that's interested today, and just talk. That will bring you together. You'll be amazed what ideas and solutions and care already exists within your organization or community. And just showing up with other people that care is the #1 step that you can do today. Don't worry about how to change things today. Don't worry about trying to find the answers before you set sail. Just gather in the spirit of common purpose and share what you're learning along the way, and have fun.
We have the lights.